Welcome back. I am so excited. Do I say that almost every time I record a podcast? You're going to have to let me know. But I do love this work. I love the women that I work with, so it sort of makes sense. And at the time of this recording, there are only a couple Bravecation spots left. Women have been applying for spots. We've gone through the approval process, and I cannot wait for Costa Rica. It's going to be our first international retreat, and it's going to be amazing. I hope that you are having a wonderful week, and I want to tell you a quick story. Last week, I facilitated a leadership workshop for a well-known nonprofit. And if you're thinking, wait a second, I'm not a leader, I don't know if this is relevant for me, I want you to keep listening. We dove into what I call stress behaviors and exactly what to do to overcome them. And I want to share the reactions that a few people had. One person shared that she has a tendency to shut down. One person shared that she gets highly critical. One person shared that she acts super nice, and she said, I actually do this even when I feel pissed. And one person shared that she recently fell into blaming, and now that she was thinking about it, she shows up in that way more than she thought. I want to talk about specifically the person who shut down, although I could say everything that I'm going to say in this episode about each of these stress responses. The person who shut down shared that she feels a little dramatic and sensitive at times. But what I could see is her response isn't dramatic, and it wasn't being too sensitive. It was a defense mechanism. Her body wasn't trying to create conflict. It was trying to avoid the shame of feeling misunderstood. And today, that's what we're going to unpack. Defense mechanisms, also known as stress behaviors. These are the hidden patterns that deeply feel like the negative parts of your personality, but they are actually unconscious strategies that your nervous system uses to keep you, quote unquote, safe. It doesn't actually keep you safe, but to your nervous system, it feels like it's a protective mechanism. If you have ever found yourself thinking, why do I shut down during hard conversations? And maybe you gave yourself, well, I just don't like conflict. That's really not the whole story, and I promise you that. Why do I feel like I need to explain myself? People tell me no is a sufficient response. Why do I overreact, or why do I feel completely numb? This is not just your personality. These are defense mechanisms, and the beautiful news is that you can overcome defensiveness when you have the right tools. And today's episode is going to touch on that. And if there's someone there thinking like, oh, I don't think this is relevant for me. Like, I've definitely seen people get defensive, but I don't get defensive. If you could give me a penny for every time that somebody has told me that, I would be a millionaire. And I'm not exaggerating. People think that they're not defensive. And guess what? The whole world is. It is quite literally something that every single human experiences and deals with, and the vast majority of people have no idea. And one reason why the work that I do is so profound and why I'm able to do it with everyone from stay-at-home moms to executive leaders is because every single person gets defensive pretty much daily. And again, the vast majority of them have no idea. So most defense mechanisms don't actually protect you from others. Now, to be clear, I'm not talking about physical defense or physical protection. I'm talking about emotional responses. Okay. What is actually happening when you get defensive or when somebody else gets defensive is they're trying to protect themselves from their own emotions or insecurities. You heard that right. When you get defensive, you have been unconsciously attempting to protect yourself from feeling your emotions or your insecurities. And When that happens, you don't have control. Your defense mechanism has control. And if you were raised by an emotionally immature parent, for instance, defense mechanisms weren't just common, they were modeled as normal regularly for you. They were a way to survive. But what protected you in the past is now actually preventing you from healing. I will say, people come in and they work with me and they're like, oh my gosh, like your work includes so much. I feel overwhelmed. I don't know. How am I going to be able to retain this? Am I going to be able to apply all this? And this is what I tell them. If you learn one thing in this program, one, and you embody it, your entire life will change completely. Your entire life. And this is one of the things that I point out as the biggest, I can't think of the right word here, but basically the biggest bang for your buck is mastering your defensiveness. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what is mastering your defensiveness. Now, like I said, these are automatic. They're unconscious behaviors that your nervous system uses to avoid discomfort, pain, shame, and vulnerability. And I want to remind you, everything that you want is on the opposite side of what you are avoiding. So if you've been avoiding discomfort, pain, shame, vulnerability, you bet your bottom dollar that everything you want is on the opposite side of that. Defense mechanisms are conditioned, they're familiar, they're fast. Like I said, they're automatic, and they are largely invisible until somebody like me holds a mirror up. So I'm going to hold a mirror up a little bit today to help you understand which defense mechanisms you may be showing daily. Now, I want you to just picture a sailboat. And you know that a sailboat has a steering wheel. You got a visual in your head? Okay, now imagine that a tennis racket is the steering wheel. No matter how hard you try, you're not going to go anywhere fast if you were trying to steer a sailboat with a tennis racket. Okay, it's like trying to move through life with defense mechanisms as your main tool. Familiar, yes. Automatic, yes. Helpful, maybe there's been the perception that it's been helpful at times, but it was never meant to carry you through life, ever. And when I first started my own healing journey, I thought a lot of things about myself, but one of the things that I thought was that I was just overreactive. I was chronically catastrophizing. I was hypercritical of myself. I was shutting down anytime I felt misunderstood. I was actually critical of other people too. And I didn't realize it at the time that those were not my personality quirks. They were defense mechanisms. And they were how I learned to protect myself when I was younger. And they were also the very thing keeping me stuck. Because every time I was defensive, I was not feeling my emotions and my insecurities. And when we avoid feeling things, that thing that we're avoiding controls our life. And I don't know about you, but I wanted to feel in control. I didn't want to feel out of control anymore. So we don't hold on to defense mechanisms, like I said, because it's our personality, although that is what most people believe. We hold on to them because they worked in some capacity, at least at some point, whether it was when you were a kid, a teen, something like that. But if you grew up around chaos, around perfectionism, around criticism, your system may have learned to do a few specific defense mechanisms, like people pleasing. Most people have no idea that's actually a defense mechanism. What are we avoiding there? Rejection. Criticism, to give your system a sense that it has control and to regain control. Withdrawal or shutting down, this could be to avoid shame. Using humor or sarcasm to deflect vulnerability. Intellectualizing, to feel in control of feelings when you were never safe to feel those. That's just a list that's scratching the surface. Okay, and that's a list of some, I'll say, default responses that I see in people. And I want to look at a few more common ones. Another one is rationalization. So, like, it's not that big of a deal. I'm fine. This could also show up a bit as denial. If I deny it, then I don't have to deal with it. Projection, which is blaming others for the very thing that you may be struggling with on the inside. Yes, most people have done it in an organization. Blame is the most common one. Minimizing. So this is dismissing pain with phrases like, oh, it's not that bad. Other people have it worse. Deflection. So changing the subject when things get too real. Over functioning. So this is taking over so you don't have to feel out of control. Over explaining, trying to manage how other people perceive you. Shutting down, which could be going numb, disassociating, feeling nothing at all. These may sound familiar to you. And you might be like, oh, yeah, I can think of a ton of people that do that. Right now, I actually want you to focus on you because that's where you will get the most value. So if I went through that list a little fast, re-listen to it, all of the ones that I referenced so far, and ask yourselves, where is this showing up in my life? These patterns don't actually protect us from anything. They keep us stuck. They disconnect us from ourselves and from others. And they don't have to be your default response anymore. It's not your destiny. Just like you can update a freaking phone, you can update your nervous system's default response. And healing doesn't mean, I just want to be clear, it doesn't mean you're never going to get defensive again. I still get defensive. But what becomes available for you is you get defensive far less often. You notice it faster, you recover quicker, and you choose differently. And you cannot shift what you cannot see. And just like I said at the beginning of this episode, defense mechanisms are designed to be unconscious responses. And the vast majority of people that I meet have said to me, I had no idea I was defensive. I could see it in others, but I didn't think I was a defensive person. So inside Brave Academy and at my in-person retreats, we dive into this. We dive into these stress behaviors, these defense mechanisms, and exactly how to break free. And women are very, very often shocked to discover how many of their day-to-day behaviors are actually defense mechanisms. I've heard them say things like, I thought this was just my personality. I didn't realize that shutting down in conversations was actually a trauma response. I had no idea helping people all the time was me trying to avoid my own anxiety and my own emotions, my own insecurities. And once we identify your pattern, that's when the real healing begins. Because healing, it doesn't mean that you never get defensive again. Like I said, I just want to be clear because sometimes people don't hear what I'm saying. It doesn't mean you're never going to get defensive again. It means that you're going to notice it faster. You're going to recover quicker and you're going to be able to choose something different with ease. Okay. So awareness is the first step toward freedom. Imagine for a moment that you have a canoe and somebody is actually using a spoon. Maybe it's like one of those bigger spoons that you use, in a pot on the stove. Okay, so they're using a spoon to be able to row the canoe. Is that effective? No. Can they still move through life that way? Sure. But that's like moving through life with defensiveness every single day. We learn to put it down and then pick up what actually works. You're allowed to do the very same for yourself. If this episode resonated with you and you are ready to finally understand why you do what you do and how to shift it, I'd love to invite you to check out Brave Academy and to work with me in some capacity. Inside, we cover over 40 of the most common defense mechanisms, and I'll walk you through exactly how to uncover your unique patterns, how to rewire your nervous system's protective responses, and how to finally show up with emotional clarity, presence, and ultimately freedom. You can visit www.brave-method.com/book. I'll put that link in the show notes so you can just click it. And doing so, you can book a free call to ask me questions directly or just send me a DM on Instagram or on Facebook. All right, I'll see you next Tuesday.